Hey guys, welcome back. I hope you are having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is a pro-revenge story. This happened almost 2 years ago. Some details are intentionally vague. This will be a long read, but I promise you it will be worth it at the end. I was working in an organization that was super toxic, so much so that we were a revolving door. Most employees stayed only for a few months. To counter this, our management put a 6-month notice into everyone's contract, including the existing employees. It's not strictly illegal where this happened, but very unusual. I believe the idea behind that was to make it harder for the employees to find a job outside, as potential employers didn't usually want to wait for 6 months. However, this didn't work, as most people simply quit and waited for a month or two before starting their job hunt. I was there for almost 5 years. I needed the money, so I put up with whatever abusive nonsense was thrown at me. My boss was a guy we'll call Marcus, not his actual name. Now, Marcus wasn't particularly good, but he sometimes respected the fact that I was the most tenured grunt in this organization. Do note that after about 3 years, I was doing a lot of additional work on top of my official responsibilities, primarily because I was the only one who knew how to do those tasks. Everyone else had already left. This will become important later. Enter Alicia, also not her actual name. Alicia was poached from a somewhat infamous tech giant and was literally flown in from Silicon Valley. She was brought in to strategically improve our division. This was quite strange given that our division generated most of the company's profits. Within months, Alicia made the environment even more toxic. She pulled Marcus's team under her and got Marcus fired, and she actively encouraged us grunts to spy on each other. One day, Alicia called me into her office. "Listen," she said, her voice dripping with disdain. "I've been watching you, and I have to say you're not pulling your weight around here." I was stunned. At this point, I was doing quite well in the organization, plus I had been doing a lot of additional work critical to our business since only I knew certain systems and processes, see high attrition above. So I was quite angry. I started looking out. I wasn't still brave enough to quit and start looking. Fortunately, I was able to find a job that was willing to wait the 6 months. So it was my turn to take Alicia aside and tell her I quit. Boy, was Alicia pissed. She went from denial to negotiation before acceptance. "You can't quit," she exclaimed, her face turning red. "I just did," I replied calmly. "What if I give you a raise at the year end?" She tried to negotiate. "No thanks, I've made up my mind." Thus, I was serving my notice and working away like an honest bee, my usual work plus the additional work. At this point, I was called in by HR and told that Alicia wanted me gone. The insane part was that they wanted me to pay the company for the 5.5 months shortfall in notice. I obviously refused, then went back and checked the contract. Turns out that a notice of less than 6 months could only happen through mutual consent, and the initiating party, company if they wanted me gone sooner, or me if I wanted to leave earlier, had to compensate the other party for the shortfall. The next day, I stopped doing almost all of my work. I logged in and logged out my hours and did jack shit. I stopped doing any additional work I had been doing and started taking it really slow on my primary job responsibilities. Since no one else understood the details of what I did, I knew it would be very hard for Alicia or HR to prove that I was doing any of this on purpose. Then I sat back with my popcorn. Soon there was a complete meltdown all around. Alicia would pull me into meetings and scream and try to bully me, and I would say nothing but smirk to her face. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" she yelled during one such meeting. I shrugged. My job, as outlined in my contract. Next, they tried to have someone else learn the additional work I used to do for me so that they could do what I did. Remember I said earlier how I was the only one who knew some of the old systems and processes? Well, now I claimed I didn't really remember any of them, so obviously there could be no handover. "I'm sorry," I said with mock sincerity to the poor new guy they sent to learn from me. "It's been so long, and these systems are so complex, I just can't seem to recall the details." Alicia could do nothing, as none of this had been my responsibility or part of my contract, since the leadership had been only too happy to see me do this for free. Soon my workplace turned into a dumpster fire. The HR Alicia smartened up and offered to buy out my notice if I cooperated and helped transition my work. I refused. "No thank you," I said with a smile. "I think I'll serve out my full notice period." Then, to twist the knife further, I started having meetings with fellow grunts. Remember, everyone was always a newbie, and encouraging them to leave as well. Indirectly, nothing that could implicate me. "You know," I'd say casually during lunch breaks, There are a lot of great opportunities out there. Have you ever thought about exploring them? HR tried to get me to leave twice more, but I ended up serving the full 6 months. Remember the mutual consent part? As I walked out on my last day, Alicia caught up with me at the elevator. "I hope you're happy with what you've done," she hissed. I turned to her with a grin. "Absolutely. I've never been happier to complete my contractual obligations. Have a great day, Alicia." And with that, I stepped into the elevator and out of that toxic environment for good. The next one is an entitled people's story. Growing up, my sister and I were super close to our grandpa. He was this cool old dude who always had the best stories about his adventures when he was younger. One of his prized possessions was this really old bike from like the 1940s or something. It was in amazing condition, and he'd tell us all about how he used to ride it everywhere back in the day. When Grandpa passed away a few years ago, he left the bike to my sister in his will. She was thrilled to have this special memento to remember him by. She kept it displayed in her living room and would show it off to visitors, sharing Grandpa's stories about his rides. Everything was fine until Karen moved in next door to my sister about 6 months ago. At first she seemed nice enough, always waving and making small talk. But things took a weird turn when she saw the bike one day while dropping off some mail that had been delivered to her house by mistake. Karen: "Oh my goodness, what a beautiful antique bicycle. Where on earth did you get that?" My sister: "Thanks, it was my grandfather's. He left it to me when he passed away." Karen: "Really? How interesting. You know, I'm something of a bike enthusiast and collector myself. I'd love to take a closer look sometime if you don't mind." My sister didn't think much of it and invited Karen in to check out the bike. Big mistake. Karen spent like 20 minutes examining every inch of it, asking all kinds of detailed questions about its history and origins. Looking back, the obsessive interest should have been a red flag. A few days later, Karen showed up at my sister's door again. Karen: "Hi there. I hope you don't mind me dropping by, but I haven't been able to stop thinking about that gorgeous bicycle. I'd really love to add it to my collection. Would you consider selling it to me? I'd be happy to pay top dollar." My sister: "Oh, I'm sorry, but it's not for sale. It has a lot of sentimental value to me since it was my grandfather's." Karen: "I totally understand, but surely you'd rather see it go to someone who can truly appreciate its historical significance? I promise I'd take excellent care of it. How about $5,000? My sister: "That's very generous, but I'm really not interested in selling at any price. It means too much to me." Karen: "Well, if you change your mind, let me know. I'm happy to go higher on the offer." We thought that would be the end of it, but boy were we wrong. Over the next few weeks, Karen kept coming by with increasingly ridiculous offers for the bike. $10,000, $15,000. She even offered to trade her car for it at one point. Each time, my sister politely but firmly declined. Then one day there was a knock at the door. My sister opened it to find a guy in a suit standing there. Suit guy: "Good afternoon, I'm looking for my sister's name. Are you her?" My sister: "Yes, that's me. Can I help you?" Suit guy: "I'm afraid I'm here to serve you with legal papers. You're being sued for wrongful possession of property." My sister: "What? Sued by who?" Suit guy: "The plaintiff is listed as Karen, last name. Have a nice day." He handed over a thick envelope and left. My sister was in shock. She called me right away in a panic. "Karen is suing me? Over Grandpa's bike? What the hell?" I rushed over to look at the court documents with her. Basically, Karen was claiming that the bike actually belonged to her family originally. She said her great-uncle or something had the exact same model bike stolen from him back in the 1950s. She was demanding that my sister turn over the bike to her as its rightful owner. The whole thing was ridiculous. We knew for a fact that our grandpa had bought the bike brand new when he was a teenager. He even still had the original receipt in his old papers. But Karen was really going for it with this lawsuit. She wanted the bike plus $50,000 in damages for emotional distress or some BS. My sister was freaking out. Neither of us had ever been involved in a lawsuit before and had no idea what to do. I told her not to worry, that Karen's claims were total nonsense and it would get thrown out of court. But we decided to consult a lawyer just to be safe. The lawyer confirmed what we thought. Karen had absolutely no case. He helped us put together all the documentation proving my sister's rightful ownership of the bike. We had the will, the receipt, photos of Grandpa with the bike going back decades, everything. When our court date finally arrived, Karen showed up with this sleazy-looking lawyer who tried to spin this whole dramatic tale about her poor great-uncle and his stolen bicycle. The judge wasn't buying it, though. He kept asking for actual evidence to back up their claims, which of course they didn't have. Our lawyer presented all our documentation and basically tore apart their entire argument. The look on Karen's face when the judge dismissed her case was priceless. But the best part was yet to come. The judge. Not only do I find the plaintiff's claim to be completely without merit, I am troubled by the frivolous nature of this lawsuit. It appears to be a clear attempt to harass and intimidate the defendant into giving up her rightfully inherited property. Therefore, I am ordering the plaintiff to pay all of the defendant's legal fees and court costs. Karen's jaw dropped. Her lawyer started sputtering about filing an appeal, but the judge shut that down real quick. I strongly advise against any further legal action regarding this matter. If you persist in harassing the defendant, I will not hesitate to impose sanctions. My sister and I walked out of that courtroom feeling like $1,000,000. Karen tried to catch up to us in the parking lot, still insisting that the bike should be hers. We just ignored her and drove off. The icing on the cake? A couple weeks later, we got a certified letter from Karen's lawyer. Turns out filing bogus lawsuits is considered an ethics violation for attorneys. He got in trouble with the State Bar Association and had to send a formal apology. The letter included a check covering all of my sister's legal expenses plus some extra for the hassle. We never saw or heard from Karen again after that. Last I heard, she put her house up for sale and moved away. Good riddance. My sister still has Grandpa's bike proudly displayed in her living room. Now she's got an even better story to tell visitors about it. How she fought off a crazy neighbor in court to keep our family's heirloom where it belongs. The next one is a petty revenge story. This story takes place when I was in the 9th grade and had just started at a new school. It was a small private Catholic school. On passing, one might mistake it for a house. From the very first day I started at that school, I hated it. The majority of the students had grown up together and all of the families were close friends. The cliques and the prejudices against new kids were insane. And of course, I found myself outside the approval of the school. About a month or so into the school year, I had the misfortune to start liking a certain asshole named Joe. You could say that he was the popular kid, adored by all students and teachers. Indeed, he was very charismatic, and I fell for it. He did not reciprocate my feelings, obviously, and I was butthurt. I took my revenge. One morning, I stuck a tampon in the pocket of his coat that was hanging on the coat rack. To this day, I'm not sure what I was trying to accomplish by doing that. I guess I just wanted to shake him up a little or something. I stuck it in and scurried off to class. I had no intention of anyone else knowing about it. A little later, when I was in class, I actually started to feel bad about it, and decided to go take the tampon out of Joe's coat. I asked to be excused and left the room, heading to the coat rack. There were people milling about, so I was waiting for the coast to clear. Suddenly, Joe's best friend, Isaac, comes out of class and grabs the coat off the coat rack, bringing it into the classroom. There went my chance at redemption. I headed back to class. It was almost the end of class, so everyone was just chilling, waiting for the bell. It was a class of about 20 people. Joe and Isaac were standing in front of the class, and Isaac hands Joe his coat, which he apparently asked Isaac to get for him. I don't know why he didn't do it himself. As Joe puts on the coat, Isaac says, "Hey, there's something sticking out of your pocket." "What? Where?" "Right here." Isaac proceeds to pull out the tampon in front of the entire class, which erupts into commotion. Isaac was confused for about 5 seconds until the realization of what he was looking at hits him, and his eyes bulged out of his head. Joe himself was a sight to behold. His face was beet red, and his jaw might as well have been on the ground. The entire class was cackling. He rushed out of the room with Isaac right at his heels. I stayed at that school for 2 more years, and nobody ever found out it was me who did it. I moved to a different state and went to a public school for senior year, which was one of the best experiences of my life. But now and then I'll still get a kick out of the expression on Joe's face. Petty as hell? Oh yeah, but also satisfying. The next one is a malicious compliance story. Like some of my previous stories, this tale revolves around my time as a supervisor in a call center, an employee who didn't like me called Jamers, and my malicious compliance with HR Jamers was a new hire, probably about 21 at the time. Young kid whom you could tell grew up privileged and entitled. But hey, I didn't do the hiring, and everyone deserves a chance starting out somewhere. I just wish this guy was hired somewhere else. Now, I prided myself as being a fair guy, friendly and understanding. Jamers, however, was always the victim and nothing was ever his fault. Customer complained on his service, not his fault. Incorrect information given, he was told the wrong information. Called off, something had come up beyond his control, on and on it went with him. Nothing ever his fault. The issue with me came to a head when I had to correct him on a call he took. The information he gave was so incorrect and potentially damaging to the client, I had to call the client and give them the correct information while apologizing for the misinformation. Company policy at the time caused this to be an automatic write-up. I brought Jamers to an office, door opened mind you, to tell him he was being written up and why. At first it started with every excuse in the book, then it started with him asking why I was being hostile and mean. I wasn't. And why was I yelling? Again, I wasn't, and the door was left open so there would have been multiple witnesses. He refused to sign the write-up. That's fine, it would go in his file regardless. As we were done, he marched up to HR. About half an hour later, HR called me into their office. They asked me why I yelled and cussed at Jamers. WTF, now my bad for not having another sup with me when writing him up, but everyone would have heard me yelling had it happened. I'm a big guy and my voice carries. I denied this, of course. HR told me they were throwing out this write-up since to them it wasn't a big issue. This act effectively neutered me, which caused a ripple effects. It was now known if I did my job, HR would just reverse anything I did. HR also told me from here on out, if Jamers had an issue or infraction, they would handle it. Okay, so here's where the malicious compliance comes into play. They had zero idea how many side conversations and other crap I had to deal with when it came to Jamers. Needed to call off, go talk to HR. Got a complaint, I'd tell them to go to HR and I'd send them an email why. Requesting a day off to HR you went. It became a fact that HR had to deal with him once to twice a day for months. Anything even slightly minor, I sent him to HR. I know it was driving them insane, as they hated to be bothered. Finally, HR asked me to have a meeting with them. They told me Jamers called off and he was going to be put on a final and they wanted me to do it. I reminded them they asked to be put in charge of him. We came to a compromise, as I wanted to play nice, and said we both would. Jamers was brought to the office and told he was being put on a final for attendance. But it wasn't his fault, he cried. He had to go to the doctor. HR asked for his doctor's excuse. He said he would bring it tomorrow. The next day, Jamers came into HR and said, "This isn't working out. I quit." HR got a hint of what I dealt with, and the trash took itself out. I love the justice. The next one is an entitled people's story. Years ago, I had a job that I loved, but it was a dead end, so I decided to change jobs. But before that, I met this older woman. She was in her late 30s, early 40s, and I was on my mid-20s, who worked on the same building, but for a different employer. She seemed pretty cool. We used to hang out when we could, and she said she'd love to work with me someday. Then she got fired and we stopped talking, but just for timing. She had told me all her previous jobs had ended badly, but she also explained why it was always unfair. I was young and admired her, so I believed her. I even helped her get her stuff back because when she got fired, it was on bad terms and she wouldn't be allowed in the building anymore. But I never got the details of that. I found another job after that, then got another at the same time and lived my life quite happily. COVID hit, and I lost one of my jobs. I found a very low-paying one and started to get desperate for money. I remembered my friend from back then and thought she could give me some advice and moral support. I never thought she would offer me a job because of her history, but she did. Not super well paid, but better than my other second job, so I did the math, and with those two salaries I'd be fine again, and I quit the low-paying job. She is the president of a non-profit foundation with a business partner, and I was going to be the third person on the team. The day I started the new position with her, she told me she did her math wrong. She could only pay me a very low amount, lower than my previous job, almost minimum wage. She also never hired me, so she never paid for Social Security at all. In my country, your employer adds an amount towards that. So I was stuck there, really struggling with money, but at least the job was super fun, challenging, and I was working with a friend, so that was good. She paid my salary on time the first 2 months. Then every end of the month she would start crying, literally, about her own financial status, how she had no money at all and she could only pay me a part of it now and the rest later. She did that, but still, not the ideal situation. The rest of the month she would have her nails done, go to expensive parties, go out on vacations, lend money to her business partner who had a drug problem, etc. Things started to get worse every month, but I never thought a friend would screw me over on purpose. Until then, I felt sorry for her. How silly of me. She had started to use money from her family-in-law without them knowing, and they started to get suspicious. I think that's how she managed to pay me, but she never said with all the words, just vague implications. We were working on a project for a big company, and after the first delivery, the company said there were many errors in our proposal. We checked, and it was all on the things she had done, but she yelled and blamed it on me. That's when it clicked in my head. My part wasn't even relevant for that part of the process yet. I asked her to stop yelling at me, and to please explain what she needed from me, because she wasn't being clear and I wasn't the one in charge of the faulty parts, so I wasn't sure of how to fix that. She just started to yell even more, now saying she had a friend in my same field check my work and it was incomplete. It really was, because I needed her part to finish mine, and she would keep changing it. That was a Friday, so I told her I was going to keep working from home. We could talk on Monday. Monday came and I went to the office. She wasn't there. I tried calling her and no response. I texted her that we needed to talk before I started working, but she replied she was at the company we were working for, which I knew was impossible for a number of reasons. I told her I quit and I was taking all social media accounts' passwords with me until she paid me my full salary. The week before she was crying about not having money, but this time I got the money right away, so I gave her the passwords, and that's how I learned that just because someone is your friend, that doesn't mean it's a good idea to let the important things go. Thank you for watching. I would really appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. We'll see you again tomorrow.